Good morning. I am Amy Landelt from North Shore Acupuncture Center. And before we get started, it is Memorial Day. So I want to take a second just to acknowledge those that have given their lives for our country. So we appreciate them and want to make sure we take a second for that. This session today is part of the Perimenopausal in a Pandemic series. And today we are going to be talking about uncovering your inner queen. So when I thought about this topic, what this topic means to me is that process in perimenopause that you go through, where you really re-examine who you are and what's important to you. And sometimes people decide, they kind of uncover who they are, their authenticity, what's important to them, what they value, and start speaking their truth as well. And so I invited Queen Wheeler. She was the first person I thought of, not because of her name. So I've known Queen for 4 years now. And what I had the opportunity to observe after I met Queen, we connected instantly, but I observed her going through a process where she started speaking out about what was true to her. She's always going through a process of introspection, but a particularly deep one where she was speaking out about her truth. And that truth cost her relationships and cost her, there was cost to that. But it was just so inspiring to watch you go through that process and really speak up for who you are and no longer live by maybe things that you grown up being taught or believing, really questioning that and understanding what you believed yourself and speaking up for that and not dimming your light for the comfort of other people. And so I think that's a huge part of uncovering your queen as well, is just not dimming your light, not toning down who you are, or not making sure you're true to your values, regardless of how it makes other people feel around you. Yeah. And so Queen Wheeler is joining me today. I didn't tell her all of that exactly, but that was why I wanted you to be part of this discussion.
Thank you. Thank you. And that's sweet.
So before we get started, I just want to let you know, if you have questions or comments that you want to add to our discussion, we'd love to have you be a part of this. So yes, please add your comments and I'll make sure I incorporate those as part of the discussion as well. And if you weren't able to catch this live, but you're watching us later, still please add your comments. And if you have questions, I'll try to get back to you on those as well. But please just give us some hearts and likes as well so that we know you're here. So thank you, Queen, for joining me.
Oh, my pleasure. And yes, we love comments and questions and all of that. Join the conversation, because that's what makes the conversation so interesting, is to hear it from the different perspectives of women of all ages and of all stages going through this thing we call menopause. Years ago, a girlfriend of mine told me that you could be perimenopausal. Her doctor told her you could be perimenopausal for up to 15 years. And girl, I about fell out even when she said that. I'm like, what? So you can feel like this for up to 15 years before you even go through menopause? What the heck? Like, what kind of joke is that, right? So this can be a long process for many. And for others, it could be a very short process due to having to have certain surgeries and things like that, dealing with hormones and uterus and all of those things that we women deal with and go through. So yes, this is a fun topic for me. And it was interesting to watch myself go through menopause. I am through it. I'm on the post side. For many years now, I've been on the post side. So it's been an interesting ride. One of the things that, of course, Amy, if you got to jump in, you got to jump in, because once I start talking about something that I'm interested in,
Yeah.
I will go.
Actually, before you do, I want to make a point. Even if you're not in perimenopause, even if you're a man, just uncovering our authentic self and being true to ourselves is relevant and applies to everyone. So please
Absolutely.
feel free to be part of this discussion.
Yes, please do. Because I think the discussion, what we're doing is we're using the opportunity of the subject of perimenopausal to talk about something that affects us all at all times, but oftentimes we don't stop to pay attention to it until perimenopause show up and knock on our door, right?
Yeah.
And
And forcibly
oftentimes women
too.
are forced into that space. And so one of the first things, and I jotted down three things that I want to make sure, kind of three themes that I want to make sure that I hit. So I'm gonna try to keep myself on track and not go down any rabbit hole so that you can get the most out of this your time. One of the first things that I believe is very important, and it happens before even perimenopausal. It should be in your life at all times, but it doesn't matter when you get it in there. The importance is to get it in there, and that is to create space for yourself. Space for yourself, outer space and inner
People say
space.
that all the time, but what does that really mean for you?
All right. So when I talk about making space, creating space for yourself, outer space and inner space, I mean it literally, right? Literally. The thing about high thoughts and concepts and all of the things that we talk about when we talk about the mind and psychology and emotional makeup and all of that, if we can't bring it down and use it practically in our lives, then it just creates frustration, right? It adds fuel to the fire of self-abuse and being down on oneself. So I'm talking practically as well as spiritually, right? So for instance, practically, I'm sitting in my space right now that I've created for myself. This is my space. It is connected to my bedroom, which is my second most important space, right? Well, they rival each other, but this is where I do my spiritual work, my soul work, right? This is where I do my work. And everything in it represents something to me, right? It speaks to me, it inspires me, it motivates me, it reminds me of things. They're the colors that work with me, right? They're the aesthetics that I need. I'm a very visual person, so it's the type of art that I need. It's the type of textures that I need that will inspire me and work with me and not against me. There are no irritations here, right? There's no irritations here. There's nothing that I'm looking at going, oh, that's broken, I need to do something about that. Or, oh, I've created this space intentionally. And because I've created this space intentionally, then it was easier for me to create the inner space intentionally, right? To allow myself to expand some so that I had room to move things around. And that's what this space reminds me of. And so if you have, if you already have space, in your home or wherever, right? Wherever you can find space. If you already have space, then be intentional about what that space means, what it needs to look and feel like for you to do your deepest spiritual, soul, mental, emotional work, right?
Yeah,
And
for me, that space is actually outside in a park that's down the road from us. It's by a tree, so it's not even in my home. It's outside.
yes, absolutely. And that's a good point because people often think that space means you have to it has a specific location that it has to be in. And that's not true at all, right? But part of the reason for making space for yourself is to discover just that, right? What your space really looks like. What does it
Yeah.
really feel like? What does it need to look like and feel like for you? So that's an important thing. So coming to even recognize, oh, it's outside. And creating a ritual for yourself and the ritual which is no different than a habit. Like we use different terminology for different things, you know, depending on what world you're talking in, but creating a ritual for yourself, right? Until it becomes a habit for you to find your way to that space and to utilize that space, right? So in that ritual of making yourself at first, because oftentimes it's like making yourself at first until it becomes something that's second nature to you. Being in that space then informs you of, is that the right space, right? But you gotta start somewhere. So this is my space. I am very intentional about this space. Everybody can't come up into this space, right? Others around me respect this space just as I do. They honor this space just as I do. And the one thing that I definitely want to say about creating your space and creating your rituals, you can do like I did, you know, find a space in your house, or like Amy did, find a space outside and have some candles and some incense and things like that. And we all see videos of people working with altars or working with nature or what have you. Now, it is okay to adopt someone else's ritual or someone else's philosophy, but it is no substitution for your own. So that's the number one thing that I want you to know. So we're talking about creating spaces. It is not a substitution for your own. And this time of life comes to make you well aware of that.
Yeah.
It comes to knock on your door and say, look, you've been substituting your own philosophy with someone else's, your own beliefs with someone else's, your own knowing with someone else's. And that's no longer going to work for you. Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the things that we start feeling, you know, when we're going through this beautiful change, right? But it is definitely a change that comes and it disrupts a lot of stuff. Yeah,
that's beautiful. And hi, Denise. I want to say hi to Denise, and thanks for joining us. Yeah, that's beautiful, because I think people will often go to their teacher to find out, you know, should I be meditating? Should I be chanting? Should I be praying? Should I be journaling? And they try to do something that they don't even enjoy doing.
Right. And this is a time when you start feeling the tension of that, where there's something that's no longer compensating. You know, this time of life, we find out what we can no longer compensate for. You know, when we're younger, we eat whatever we want, we do whatever we want, and our body compensates for it. Our emotional body compensates for us getting into foolishness, right? Our physical body compensates for us overeating and eating too much sugar and not sleeping well enough, right? Our mental body, it compensates for us just taking in all kinds of garbage and then just kind of sorting it out and laughing at this and laughing at all and all of that. And during this time, all of a sudden it all starts saying, the body's like, oh, I'm done compensating. You eat that, it's going right around your belly parts. That's what mine's saying. I don't know what everybody else is saying. That's what mine said. You can eat that if you want to, but when you wake up in the morning, I'm going to show you exactly where it went, right? So I'm not compensating anymore.
It's horrible.
Right.
Instantly,
right. Yeah.
Denise is saying that her time and space, what she likes to do is reading, exercising, and putting puzzles together.
Yes. Knowing you have to know yourself. Well, and the thing about this is that it's in motion, right? So this is not I learned myself and that's it. It's in motion. It shifts all the time. And that's why creating that space and going to that space for yourself is so important, so that you could get an update, right? Versus you're still, and that's part of what this time of life brings for us anyway, is that it shows us all the places in which we did not do the update. And we're still living off of old systems and old beliefs and old feelings and old everything, behaviors, right, that no longer serve us.
Yeah, I remember there was a day where I had high anxiety and I was so frustrated because I was like, I'm doing all the things that I'm supposed to be doing, all the things that have worked for me, and now it's not working for me. And it was because I just had to shift. I had to start doing something different.
Yeah. Yeah. And that could be a frustrating time. That could be a frustrating time between where you were, where you're going, and you're in the middle, right? And that brings me to my second thing that I want to bring up, and that's getting practical and dealing with your shit, right? Getting practical and dealing with your shit. Contrast and contradiction. This is often a time of contrast and contradiction. So contrast, in this context, the way that I'm using it is to be different than who you envision yourself to be, right? So what do you do with the childhood stuff that start coming up, the broken relationship stuff that start coming up, the secret choices that you made that nobody know about, that you carry guilt with, start coming up, right? All these things that you thought you were over, you were done, hadn't thought about in years. And all of those things start coming up, and they reflect something that other than what you know yourself to be. And you have to deal with that, right? You have to deal with that. And one of the things that Anne Armstrong said was that the heart must have a target that it understands. In that time, it is so important to understand your process and what your aim is. And hopefully your aim is healing versus let me just get out of this, let it just be over, right? Right? That's the beauty about menopause versus going into receiving your menstrual cycle. With menopause, we should be going through it differently, right? This is our second chance to do it without kicking in doors and slamming doors and catching fits and falling out, all of that stuff that we did as teenagers when we, and as in our 20s, behaving badly and blaming it on it's that time, right? It's that time of, right? So we're going through the stage again, but hopefully more gracefully this time by the time we're of that age, right?
And in Chinese medicine, there's actually an energy channel that is a belt right around your waist. And so one of the concepts is that when things happen in our life, like you said, things from childhood or, in your 20s that you can't deal with for whatever reason, it goes to this belt area. Mm-hmm. And in menopause, that's when those things start coming up. And sometimes people feel bad, like that happened so many years ago, I should be over it. But it's stored there because at the time you didn't have the wisdom or the capacity or the resources or any of the three to deal with it. Exactly. And at menopause, you have more wisdom, you have more capacity. Most of us won't have young children during menopause, and you have more resources. And so you're better able to heal from those things. So it's not that you're late in dealing with these things. This is the perfect time. Exactly. And that's why it's coming up now.
Yes, exactly. And to know that for yourself, and to know that your aim is to heal, to release, to wash, to cleanse, all of those things, right? So that you can go into this other half of your life in a better healed state, because we're always healing. As long as you're breathing, you're going to be hurt. Therefore, you will always be in a perpetual state of healing. So let's just get that out the way right there. That you're not going to come out of this as queen forever. That's just not, it's not gonna, like, it takes work, right? You still have work to do on a consistent basis. But knowing that that's your aim, right? Knowing and being able to articulate that is important, because again, the heart must have a target that it understands. If it understands it, it will go for it. It will take you all the way through, right? Then we have contradiction. Now, the way I'm defining it in this context for contradiction is to act or speak in a way that disagree with who you know yourself to be. All right. So, and this is super important. Like, I can't stress this part enough, because sometimes this is where we get in trouble. What do you do with uncried tears and disappointments that pop up? What are you doing with that? Right? What do you do with the contradictions when you wake up and you think to yourself, this is not how I envisioned my life was going to be?
Yeah.
Like, I never saw myself in this job like this for this long. Right? I thought I would be here by now. I thought I would be there by now. What do you do with the contradictions that you see around you? Do you act like a raging hormone teenager going through the change and start cutting people, because we're good at, that is one of the things about going through this change. Sometimes it's like it gives you liquid courage. You know how they say when people start drinking, all of a sudden they get courage. They say things that going through this change will give you liquid courage. And you'll begin to say things, right? And do things and behave in ways, if you allow yourself to do that, be wild, right, with it. All out of, because I'm going through the change, because my hormones are off, or because it's almost like a false confidence that it gives you, a false confidence. And so all of a sudden, I wear what I want, where I do what I want to do, but it's a contradiction to who you know yourself to be. But because of that false confidence and that liquid courage that it gives you, you start trying all kinds of cussing people out, even though in your mind, who you know yourself to be is not that anymore. Right? That might have been you in your 20s. That might have been you in your 30s, but you know that there's something in you that says that I'm not that anymore. Like, that does not represent how I know myself to be, what I sense I am. Right? But when you start seeing the contradictions around you, it can trip you up into acting like you were, versus as who you are and who you know yourself to be, and the highest vision that you have of yourself, So it also, in that, allows you to reconnect to your own language, to know what it is. What do you sound like now? Like, what is your language? You're bringing back a old language of truth, authenticity, right? You're bringing that back. But the thing about bringing back that lost language is that if you bring back the lost language, it presumably means that you are also bringing back thoughts that otherwise could not have been said any other way. So now you have language to express those hurts that you didn't have language for before, right? You have the language to talk about those betrayals that you didn't have the language for before. It is key to be very present to your ability to utilize that language and understand when it's for you and when it's for someone else. Because during this critical time in our lives, when we're going through transition, it's not always for us to go through it with the other person. There are some things we can handle within ourselves. It came up for us because it was for us to deal with. Not for everybody who was back then when you went through it. And right now you going and trying to call on everybody who was party to it, who was right. And that's not that. Now, I'm not saying that doesn't happen for some, but I'm saying that don't take it for granted that that's what's supposed to be. And then you go disrupt your life everybody else's life, right? And then you walk away from this having lost something that you really wanted to keep.
Yeah.
Right? Having disturbed something that had already done the work within it to get to peace. It's just that you needed to wash away the little residue that was still left within you. Mm-hmm. Right. So that's so, and learning how to process contrast and contradiction is an earned wisdom. That's not something somebody can give you. It's earned by handling your shit. It is earned. You got to deal with it. Yeah. That's a wisdom that's earned, not one that can be easily given from a teacher or a guru. You see, I'm putting all those things in quotes, right? Because the teacher that you need to hear from is within you, right? The guru that you need to hear from is within you.
Which so goes back to your creating space.
Exactly.
One of the things I've been working on is developing my self-compassion. And so that is what I try to use when I'm healing, just to check into myself and say, what is it that I need right now to heal, move forward from this? And just giving that space to hear what my heart needs.
Yes, that's probably the number one thing. I think if I had to think of what I really work with my clients with, the thing that I have to push the hardest for is compassion. That's the theme. Compassion. Having compassion for oneself. You can't, I have a saying that I say all the time, which is, I can't give anything that I haven't first received from myself, and I can't receive anything that I haven't first given to myself. So if I can't give myself compassion.
Say that again. I'm going to type that in.
Oh, I cannot give that which I haven't first received from myself, and I can't receive that which I haven't first given to myself. So, that's one of my philosophies. Again, speaking of, you got to find your philosophies. You have to uncover your own internal philosophies, and that's one of mine that I live by. And therefore, in order to show compassion, I must receive compassion from myself first, right? Can't give you anything that I haven't received from myself first. And I can't receive anything from you. You can be the most loving person ever. Can't receive anything from you that I haven't first given to myself first. So if I haven't given myself love, I'm not going to receive yours, not in the way that you are giving it. And then the last one, because I know we run out of time, but Queens. Oh, go ahead.
We have a couple people. So Becky is just acknowledging when she went through menopause, she went through some of what we were talking about and realized it wasn't the real her, and it allowed her to become her truer self and embrace herself. And then Denise just pointed out, it was a bit back, I missed jumping in, but that all of this is in line with the shift of caring for our children, because at menopause they're grown and you have to figure out what's next while you let go of them.
Oh, yes.
Which is a whole other conversation.
Yes, but it goes right into my third thing. So it's perfect, right? And that is, so the third thing is queens hold court. Okay, queens hold court. Judgment and ruling. The act of judgment and ruling. Now, the transition of the menstrual cycle demands that we learn how to keep time, know our seasons, care for ourselves, and resolve emotional issues without it prompting us to do so. So it's going away and it says, you old enough now. I done been with you long enough that you should have been and figured out your own process by now, without depending on me to have to show up and remind you of some things, right? To remind you to care for yourself, to remind you that there's some unresolved emotional issues, to remind you to rest or to come inward, right? There's always a reason for disturbance, always. An imbalance that must be eliminated or a wrong that must be righted. So those were 2 points I wanted to make, so I made sure I kind of I took notes because I can go off on just talking. And so I was like, well, what do I really want to know? Let me write that down. That way I'll be sure to say it. So judgment. Oh, judgment and ruling. Y'all, listen, don't go blowing up your life. Don't go blowing up your life. Don't go blowing up your life. Another one of my sayings that I love is, do not make decisions in the winter when you don't know what spring is going to bring. Don't go pulling up stuff and digging up stuff when you don't know if you just dug up a bulb. You don't know if that was a weed or a real flower. You just don't know in the wintertime. And you disturbing stuff, all the stuff that you done sowed, you're disturbing and killing and uprooting after years of sowing seed. Years of sowing seed. And you're going in with a bulldozer and just, right? Don't do it. Don't do it. Queens hold court, right? Queens understand how to properly use judgment and make proper rulings. Now, this is where wisdom come in with this time that we go through, right? Is when judgment becomes this for you: creation without destruction. Creation without destruction. That's how queens judge and rule, right? Rebirth through integration. Rebirth through integration. And then the final one, remain the same but different. How do you do those things? How do you create without destruction? How can you create the life that you envision for yourself without destroying the one that you've built? Some people don't even take time to figure out if that's possible. They just, I done found myself, this don't work for me anymore, I'm out, right?
Yeah.
Years of sowing seeds, right? Years of sowing seeds, and then I'm out. Now, there are some things that, yes, you're going to let go of. But the thing is when you do all of these other things that we were talking about, creating space for yourself, right? Outward and inward, handling and dealing with your shit, contrasts and contradictions. When you're doing that work, anything that needs to be removed gracefully falls away. You don't have to go in like a bull in a china shop. It gracefully falls away. It no longer finds anything to attach to in you, right? Because you're the same but different, right? You're the same but different. So things show up differently for you. They respond differently to you now. So being able to create without destruction, being able to rebirth, like coming back into yourself, right? Coming back into yourself through integration, not through getting rid of parts of yourself. That's what you've been doing all these years, right? Putting pieces in the closet, through integration, bringing in all of those pieces of you, the hurt pieces, the happy piece, all of that. Rebirth through integration, not through removal. And then remaining the same, because you've always been you. You just had things piling up on you, just putting cloaks on. And right now you're just taking them off. That's all. But you've always been you. So it's just, you remain the same, but you do it differently now. You just do it differently. So those are my.
Hi, Nikki. Denise is bringing up a good point that she learned not to move off of emotion, especially when her emotions are all over the place. If she gives it a couple of days, it will settle down and I can make a sound decision. And I remember, I can't remember the name of the author, but she has this series of 3 books that take place in Naples. And one of the main characters, it just goes through her thoughts. And, one second her husband is like the most amazing person in the world. And, 5 minutes later, nothing is working and she wants a divorce. And just seeing how that shifts as the emotions come in and go out, and knowing that I'm not alone in that. Because I could think you're the best person since sliced bread 1 minute, and 5 minutes later, I think you're evil. And just
Girl.
like Denise said, just letting that settle, let all of that settle. All of it is pieces of truth, but then you can put that together to see. Denise likes puzzles,
right?
So you put it together to see what it settles into, and then you can make a decision.
And that's creation without destruction. That's what it is. It's bringing all of those pieces together and saying, how do they fit together? Not how do I dismantle, but how do they fit together? Perhaps they're just one thing that's in the wrong place now. Maybe I was utilizing it improperly before, and I just need to tweak something, right? So being able to create a life without destroying a life is important during this time, because like you said, the emotion, like Denise said, the emotions are all over the place there. That's why, look, that is why it's so important to understand and know yourself. You should know those things about yourself. Like, I know certain things about myself. I know that there are certain times when I'm going to behave ridiculously, right? Especially during some types of change, right? I know that before that, I'm going to act ridiculous. So I just go ahead and let myself know, and everybody around me know, look, I'm going to be okay. Like, I'm going to settle in, but I still go through this process of acting completely ridiculous until I settle in. So don't mind me, right? But it's still my responsibility to have my behind right here in my space during that time, so that I do not negatively affect people as much as possible. I try my best not to do any harm to myself and no harm to anybody else, right? And sometimes that means get in your space, right? Come back to yourself. Listen, learn the language of your emotions, learn the language of your thoughts, learn the language of your physical body, relearn that language. Learn what you sound like, right? Understand what your feelings speak to you, because your feelings speak something different to you. We use the same words, can mean totally different things. What fear means to me is not what fear means to you. It doesn't show up the same. It doesn't have the same language. We may not even be talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
Right? What joy means to you, all of that kind of stuff. So learn the language of your soul. Learn the language of your soul.
For me, one of the things that is an easier way to see if something's true to myself or not is checking in with my body and how it feels. Mm-hmm. And it can be as simple as, does it make me feel heavy or light? And I just try to spend more time doing things that make me feel light. But if anything makes me feel heavy, I look at that, and it might not be, to your point, it might not be that I need to destruct it. It's not fitting in the right place. And how do I shift that? Mm-hmm. It might be just shifting my perception about it that makes it light.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Understanding the language of it. And, but yeah, it's a wonderful time, I believe, in a woman's life, where we have an opportunity to really stop and do some housekeeping, so that when we go into this second half, we can do it with such joy and confidence and matter of factly and intention. Because, girl, don't nobody be caring after that. Listen, the beautiful thing about, like, when you start going, I remember when I was young and Oprah said, oh my God, when you turn 40, oh my God, it's everything. Girl, turned 40, and I was like, oh yes, I know what she's talking about, right? And then she was like, oh, 50s, oh my goodness, 50s are even better. Girl, hit 50, I was like, oh yes, this is. So the beautiful thing about this transition as women is that we get to come home to ourselves. And there is no place like home. Oh my God, there is no place like home within yourself. And then to live this life from that space, girl, please. Yeah. I say all the time, I would not, couldn't nobody pay me to go back to my 20s.
Yeah.
Couldn't nobody pay me to go back to my 30s. Nuh-uh, that's some hard stuff. Like as a woman, you'll be dealing with all kind of craziness, like just your own mind. And then, you know, after menopause, you look back and you go, maybe I was a little bit crazy. Like in my when I thought I was sane in my like 20s, my 30s, my 40s, I was like, maybe I did have a touch of crazy up in there. I'd be like, ooh, how my husband still with me? Like for real. It's the grace of God. It's the grace of God. Like anybody survives around me. Yeah.
Yeah, I love I think last week someone said something about being in our 40s and I was like, "Oh, I'm 50." Like, and I was claiming, I was like, I'm no longer, because 50 is great. It's amazing. Except for, you know, it's a little weird right now, but and hey,
Yeah.
Rachel, nice to see you on too. And Denise says at the same time you have to deal with feeling like you're running out of time now too.
Oh my gosh. Listen, that's why I had these notes, because Denise hitting on all the kind of stuff I would have gone off on.
Yeah.
When I
Yeah,
tell
and
you,
Marie's talking about boundaries, so she's adding another conversation.
yeah, let me tell you, and y'all know good well I could talk. Like I could talk about this stuff all day long. But seriously though, what Denise said about running out of time, girl, you know, it hit you hard. Like it hit you hard about, do I have enough time left to get this shit done? It's like, my goodness, I got to heal and I got to like launch and go save the world and make my imprint on the family and make my imprint. And again, that's why it's so critical to create that space for yourself. Because let me tell you something, I've been dealing with a little bit of that for the last couple of weeks. Another round came, because look, it's just a cycle. They just keep going around, right? And I had to own the choices that I've made, right? Because I had an idea of things that I wanted to do, places that I wanted to go, things that I want to accomplish, right? And once I got in motion, I realized, but wait a minute, that will also hold me from doing these other things that I want to do and these other things that right? And I had to make a choice. What do I feel like I'm here to impact most? Is it the world, right? Or is it my family lineage? And I chose my family lineage, which means that I'm not going to be on a public platform the way that I envisioned myself being able to be, because I choose my family lineage. There's some work that needs to be done. And that brings up another thing, ladies. I think we do ourselves a disservice as well as our daughters, because we don't talk about this process. We don't hand down information. We don't hand down a process by which they can go through so that they can get to the next level for our own lineage, whatever your line deals with, right? There's certain things that you know plague your family, your lineage, that you go through, that you know your mama went through, that your mama stop. And in this process, that's another thing I learned to do. Stop taking things so personal, because I was working out not only my own stuff, but I was working out stuff on behalf of my mom and on behalf of my grandmother, things that are in my DNA that I never experienced, but they're still with me. I didn't experience in this lifetime, but I experienced it cellularly because it's in my DNA. So I was responsible for working through as much of that as I can. And so that's been my focus, that's my choice. But in making that choice, understanding that I don't have time to do everything. I have to make decisions on what's most important. Where do I want to make impact during the rest of this time I have? And with that comes some sadness of the things that you may not get to see or do. Right? There's some sadness because, you know, we thought we were gonna do this and be this or whatever. But the remedy to that sadness is focus and vision. Persistence and focus and vision. When you're persistent about that vision, the highest vision that you have of yourself, and you're persistent and gazing into that vision and moving forward and toward and leaning into that vision, it's the remedy for the sadness. Sadness will gracefully fall away. And ain't nothing wrong with sadness anyway, unless you know that you got something to be happy about. That's all. It just tells you I really value that.
Important. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. So I think, like you said, this is a discussion that is important to have and important for us to have and process together. And I'm assuming you're okay with this, but one thing I thought of is Queen has a group of women that get together and talk, a soul circle. And that would be great if you guys are interested in joining. We can talk more about how you can connect with Queen, but these are the types of things that we discuss.
Yeah, they're welcome. Everybody's welcome to join it. The more the merrier, you know. I for a sister circles to me, and soul circles are the thing that we are missing that we used to have, right? Where the women get together and cackle. That's what they used to call it, cackling. But women get together and just really, you know, the only premise that I have for people who come to join is that I want you to come as you and speak from your real experience, right? Not from the high thoughts of what you think your experience should be and all that kind of stuff, but practically. Because the one thing that I know when working with all my clients is there's only a certain amount of themes. Like we all go through the same things, different details, right? But every single person think that they the only one. Everybody think that it's just them, right? Everybody thinks that it's just them. So when we come together, I think it's so important for us to let each other know you are not alone. Like I know, we all know that our thoughts dictate this and our emotions dictate that, and we can think ourselves this and meditate ourselves that, and we have all of these wonderful arts that we could use to move ourselves out of this space and that space and create this life and that life and all that. We all know that. And we all know with all of that, the one thing that never changes is that as long as we're breathing, we go through shit. We can't pray our way out of it. We can't meditate our way out of it. We can't wish our way out of it. As long as we breathe, we will go through shit. And that's where people feel alone, like they're supposed to not. That's part of the cycle. Life, death, life cycle. That's part of it. And so, yeah, you're welcome. Everyone's welcome to come join us. Just come as you are, like as you really are. Like not as your neighbor or somebody else's philosophy or somebody else's whatever. Because this is the thing, y'all. I talk very plain-ish, I guess. I talk very plain and try to stay very practical. But that's only because I'm not allowed to talk about the other stuff. And when I say I'm not allowed, I'm talking about my own spirit won't allow me. I get choked up in everything when I try to talk on those higher metaphysical levels. But trust me, I've probably done enough study and reading to have a PhD, right? So I understand the concepts. I've studied the religions. I've studied the metaphysics. I study all of that stuff, even though I might not sound like that type of, but it's only because, and believe me, I be wanting to, because I want to be one of the cool kids that everybody want to come to and be like, oh, she made me feel so good. I wish I could, but no, we got to stay practical in these parts. Like somebody got to keep it real in these parts so that we stay connected. That's the whole point. So that we stay connected versus disconnecting from each other by doing a mind screw is what I call it, but it disconnects us from each other.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that attracts me is just, these weren't things that I talked about growing up. We just didn't have the discussions about emotions or how you go through shit. And so it's helpful to have practical ideas of how do you go through shit? Like, what do you do? And so having those discussions and understanding that.
Can I say one more thing for real this time? This is it. This is my fifth closing for any of y'all who go to Baptist church or something. This is my fifth closing. But when you just said that, this is what it reminds me of. Listen, y'all, this is another disservice that we're doing as women of a certain age. We are saying things like, how we didn't get what we needed from our parents, how we didn't grow up this way or that way, and we didn't have. First of all, you only with your parents for like 18 years.
Yep.
Now, for most of us, we done been alive long enough to know you can't do much in 18 years. Especially when you're hustling, trying to put food on the table, trying to keep the lights on. You're just trying to keep little people alive during that time, right? But what's happening is because we have evolved in this, in psychology and emotional wellness and all of these things, we are now judging our past based off of what we've evolved to now, as if those people were supposed to behave like what we just evolved to. We just got here.
Yeah.
But we judge them with it. And this is why that's so important. This is why it's a pet peeve of mine. Because what I know, I'm in between, right? I have mama who's passed on, but very much alive to me. A mama, then here I am, and then I got a daughter, and then I got a granddaughter. So we've got layers to us, right? The one thing that I realize is I'm doing a disservice because that crap coming right back on me. Because just like if I said about my mama, I got a kid saying it about me, and then the grandchild gonna say it about their mama. So, like, we need to stop that. We need to stop that judgment, because how we judge is how we will be judged. And what we know when we hit these ages and go through this stage is that it takes a lot of living to get to this. And usually by that time, we're out of our parents' life, or out of their house, not life, but out of their house by the time they get to this part of them. And by that time, we've got them stuck, pigeonholed into what we knew them as between age 0 and 18 or 19. We won't let them change. We won't let them grow. We won't let them, right?
Yeah.
We won't take responsibility for our own growth. We keep blaming it on them because they didn't teach me this, and they didn't do that, and they didn't hug me enough, and they didn't, right? It's like, no, somewhere along, like we know that that's not how it goes. Most of us have screwed our kids up already in some form or fashion, doing the best we knew how to, thinking that we were better than our parents. And then our kids come along and be like, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. And it's like, hell, wait a minute. Hold on. I thought I knocked that out the park. But no. So yeah, that's another. Okay, that's it for real for that was my fourth closing.
Well, I want to make sure people know how they can work with you as well, and what you do when you're not talking about menopause. So Queen is a relationship, I'm not pronouncing that incorrectly, relationship and life coach. So her mission is to help women heal through the shit that comes up in their relationships with their self, with others, spirituality, and their career. And so she coaches and provides practical and easy to use tools, as you've heard, to aid the healing process of the individual while using her voice and platform, oh my gosh, to bring awareness to the systems and social conditions that cause and support our pain. So if you are interested in coaching with Queen, you can find more information about her at queenwheeler.com. Where else are great places to find you?
Well, really, that's it, because my coaching schedule is actually full. So my coaching schedule is full. However, what I am offering is, and when I say coaching schedule, I mean my ongoing. But I do have a couple slots. One of the things that I also do is soul telling, what I call soul telling, which I used to call it sacred storytelling. But one of the things that I realized with my clients is oftentimes in one session, we can do enough work, right, to where we can pull out the information from within them, because it's always about, whoever has the question has the answer. So we pull out enough information and we look at it from the soul perspective. Like, what is it that their soul spoke? Like, how does the dots connect from all of the experiences that they've had up to now, and then where they are now, and then how that connects to where they're going. So it brings great clarity is what it does. And it ties everything in, versus just looking at little blurps of your life or what have you. But it ties everything in, gives clarity, and so that you can strategically move forward in whatever it is that you want to do. So I do offer those. And again, you can contact me at queen@queenwheeler.com. That's my email, or go to queenwheeler.com. And you can also look me up on Facebook, and just under my name, Queen Wheeler, although, look me up on Facebook and join the relationship group. It's a closed group, but if you find me on Facebook, just ask to join relationship and we'll bring you on in there.
So join, and it's relationship group, right?
Mm-hmm. I think it's the relationship. I have to give you I think it's the relationship group.
Okay.
But I'll make sure that you have the link though.
Okay. Yeah, we can add that to the comment.
Yeah.
And
thank you to all of you who showed up on today's call, and then those who are going to be doing the replay, watching the replay. And thank you, Amy, for even using your platform this way. It's a great series to have.
Thank you. I think this is, like you said, this is important. Having women have real conversations about this transition and what opportunities it brings us, and also the real challenges as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. Have a great day. Enjoy the sunshine if you have some. All right. Bye.
Bye.